Joining us now from Washington is Duyeon Kim. She's the Deputy Director of the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Duyeon, good morning to you.
Hello, thank you for having me.
It's good to have you here this morning. This may be the largest confrontation between the two Koreas since the Korean War. What are the chances that North and South Korea go to war?
Well, first of all, this attack, by far, compared to provocations in the past, is much more serious and much more provocative. It's a direct attack on the South Korean territory. It has killed civilian lives and injured much more. So in that sense, it's a direct violation of the Korean armistice, also a violation of the UN Charter and a host of other non-aggression agreements. Now, to answer your question, knowing the South Korean government the way I do, South Korea does not want war. That's the last thing. That's actually out of the question. And even the U.S. will not want war as well. South Korea, as you know, already experienced a devastating war back in 1950. It has built its economy back from scratch within a very short time span to be the 13th largest or so economy in the world. So that's the last thing South Korea wants. The U.S. as well. We can imagine that because the U.S. is preoccupied in the Middle East and in Afghanistan, it will not want to wage another war in Asia. So in that sense, we can expect South Korea and the U.S. to join hands again and react in a way that is short of war, react in a military way that is short of war. Now, we have seen in the past, in our very recent past, with the Cheonan incident, that South Korea and the U.S. Joined hands and they reacted by engaging in a series of naval and military drills in the East and the West Sea. So that would be an example of how they can react militarily short of war. Now, we've also heard the South Korean President Lee Myung-bak order his military to attack or to hit North Korean missile bases along its coast if it is necessary, if it is deemed that North Korea engages in more provocations.
So, Duyeon, let's do the hypothetical if. If, let's say, in the event of war, or even a military confrontation, will North Korea use nuclear weapons?
Well, it's always very difficult to get in the mind of North Korean leader Kim Jong-il, but I would really think that the North Korean leader would not be so foolish as to first to get himself into a war, to trigger a war, or to start a war himself. Because the North knows very well that the minute it does that, the U.S. can wipe it out instantly. So I do not think that that is on the top of the North Korean leadership's agenda. Now, your hypothetical if there is a war, now this is a very difficult question. We do not know if North Korea will in fact use its nuclear weapons. But what we do know is that North Korea has nuclear weapons. And it will further develop its nuclear weapons because it needs to, according to the North, defend itself from what it calls hostile U.S. policies against it. So in that sense, but also the conventional wisdom here in the States and in Korea and across the world is that even though North Korea has nuclear capabilities, it is uncertain whether North Korea has the ability to miniaturize nuclear warheads, to mount it on top of a missile to use for war.
North Korea has shown an American scientist its enrichment plant. We know that it's modern. We know that it has the capability of producing an atomic weapon. What are North Korea's intentions?
Well, again, it's very difficult to know exactly what North Korean intentions are, but I think there is an element of North Korea wanting to achieve both a domestic and an international objective. Domestically, as we all know, or as we think we know, North Korea is preparing for a leadership succession, and it has a fast approaching deadline to become a mighty and prosperous nation by 2012. So that's a domestic aspect. The international component may be that North Korea is trying to elicit more talks to resume negotiations with the U.S. Now, I say this because this month we've seen 3 teams of Americans visit North Korea upon North Korea's invitation. The first team, led by Ambassador Jack Pritchard, he is not a nuclear scientist, but he has connections with the U.S. government here. Now, the second team, led by Dr. Hecker, now he's the actual nuclear scientist. He will know what he has seen. He will know what they mean. So he is there to confirm North Korea's intentions to confirm that North Korea is building and developing its nuclear programs. Now, the third team was comprised of Ambassador Abramowitz, Joel Witt, and Leon Siegel. Now, these are the men that accompanied Ambassador Bosworth to his last North Korea trip. Now, this team went minus Ambassador Bosworth, so we can suspect that this team was used politically and for diplomatic purposes to try and elicit more negotiations from the U.S.
Duyeon, you just said that South Korea doesn't want war, the U.S. doesn't want war. It wouldn't be favorable for North Korea or China, but North Korea just took on an act of war. What can the U.S. do from this point forward?
Well, the U.S. really has very limited options right now. It could try to talk with North Korea, but the U.S. has made it very clear that it will not be forced into negotiations. It will not buy the same horse twice, as we've heard numerous times. The U.S. could slap additional sanctions, but then people question the effectiveness of sanctions that are in place right now. The U.S. could prod China, which it should prod China to take an active role in this situation. But then there are questions surrounding whether the U.S. has leverage over China, especially because of the ongoing currency dispute. So the U.S. is very limited now. South Korea could actually take this issue to the UN Security Council and together with the international community come up with a reaction. But in terms of the U.S., because Washington wants to break the precedent from the past, the U.S. really has very limited options, but the U.S. still at an opportune time must initiate and resume dialogue, because we've seen, or we're beginning to see that ignoring North Korea really may not be the best solution, that ignoring North Korea is actually rewarding them, because we've seen now North Korea has actually developed its nuclear programs more and is engaging in more provocations. When North Korea is in dialogue with the U.S. in the past, we've seen that North Korea has not engaged in provocations.
Still early in this conflict. We'll certainly have to see how things play out. Duyeon Kim from the Center of Arms Control and Non-Proliferation. Thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you.